Okay.
That
Good
look good?
afternoon.
Frame wide?
Can you give me a tighter shot, like I'd come closer to the camera? Yeah, right. That's good. That's awesome.
That's good.
Yeah, that's good. Good afternoon, Peter, and welcome again. You're no stranger to CWS as it is.
Appreciate it. Thank you for your
But
time.
just for our guests, our audience that may not be acquainted with you, can you just give us a brief overview of who Dr. Peter Ramsaroop is and what he does?
Well, basically, I'm retired U.S. military. I returned to Guyana in 2002 as a remigrant and did some investment opportunities. Still do major investments in Guyana in real estate and some other areas. I'm an entrepreneur businessman by trade. I'm former chairman of Evolving Technologies in Washington, D.C. And, got involved in Guyana politics really from a perspective of how do we help contribute to the development of our nation, and has been involved in politics for the last decade, trying to bring about changes in the system. And some have happened, some still to happen, and that's my agenda over the next few years, is to invest as much time and energy and commitment in order to help Guyana continue to develop itself.
Peter, with all that is going on for you, all the positive, the economic positives that were going on for you in this country, why did you go back to Guyana? I mean, what was the appeal?
Well, many Guyanese around the world, I mean, I left Guyana when I was 18, came to the U.S., joined the military, but the passion of Guyana never leaves us. People say it's like your first love, your love affair, that you always remember that first love. And I think Guyana is one of those areas where all Guyanese, no matter where in the world you live, want to return to our nation and to contribute. But things have changed. We tend to have a different life when you're overseas versus what you would have had in Guyana. You try to moderate and make things the same, but financially it's not sometimes feasible for people to return. And I think by me returning, I was able financially sound enough to do that in order to contribute to Guyana, and it made it easier. But it's a system where I tell people honestly, it's frustrating to do business in our nation. It is, crime-ridden society. We have a lot of bureaucracy in the system, things that needs to constantly change. And the passion of Guyana, I think, for many of us doesn't go away, and that's basically the reason why many of us return home. To make it our home.
Peter, not that I want to take this into a political path this afternoon. We're here to talk economics and so on, but you've had your experiences, your experience with politics in Guyana. Was it really about bringing about change or helping to improve Guyana?
Well, yes. I mean, I would say, from my start of politics with former President Hoyt, who I believe was one of our great leaders in our nation, I was a part of the reform that came on board to help change the PNC back in 2001 election. I think the reform made a significant difference in the way the PNC at the time operated. That change, I continue to further that change, even with my candidacy for the PPP election in 2015. It is all about trying to influence that economic change. And my specialty is not, I can't say I'm fundamentally can make a difference in political arena in Guyana, but I've always pushed some of the economic planks, both while I was in the opposition and while I was in the current former regime, in terms of pushing the economic planks that is needed for a country to develop. So that's my contribution to what I call politics.
While you were there in the early days, what did you see or experience about Guyana's economy that encouraged you to stay on as long as you did?
Well, I saw, I was very critical. 2001 to 2005, I think the economy was at a slow rate. In 2006, I think when Barjagio took over to 2011, the economy actually grew quite a bit, percentage-wise. People may have a difference in opinion in terms of his leadership style, but the economy kept growing, and there were certain fundamental changes that needed to take place between that period of time that I think took place. And but it still had a lot to go. I mean, we're seeing right now some of the issues that the current government face. There's still a lot of changes need to take place, but the economy as a whole grew 4.5% for the last decade, and from 2006, I think 2005, our GDP was 1.4 million. In 2015, 2014, it was 3.1 billion. And in order to get to, such a growth in our GDP, that means our economy has to keep going up. What is happening today, we'll get to that. But the fact that the right projects was being developed in 2015 and in 2011, while I joined on with the then government, was some of those economic plans that I have pushed for the decade. The road to Brazil, the Deepwater Harbor, some of the major transformational projects were all put into the manifesto. Sadly, between 2011 and 2015, because of the 10th Parliament, none of those projects got off the ground.
All right, let me shift from there for a little bit. I am no economist, but I just want to ask a question. Guyana is labeled, or is being labeled, a narco state, right? With a thriving underground economy. How much of that, Peter, from your experience, would you say contributed to the growth that this 4.5% growth you claim between 2005 and 2011?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think any real hard data existed to say what that number was. I would not disagree. There was, or still is, underground economy all around the world. I mean, even the United States, the drug management system, as I call it, is significant in all countries, especially in South America, Latin America region, Colombia, and other countries. But the real economy is still is significant. I mean, we talk about General Granger talked about the Six Sisters recently. I mean, our bauxite, gold, rice, sugar were all flourishing because of the prices increase in gold over the last few years. So all of that contributed to the increase in our economy. So, I can't give you a hard number of what the underground economy.
But that's okay.
Is.
But let me ask you this.
There is a number, but I don't think it's where it would hurt significantly the growth of Guyana without it.
What key economic features are you observing that cause you to conclude that Guyana's economy is in a downturn?
Well, one, I think it started in the 10th Parliament. There were some transformation projects that the PP government had proposed that were stifled because of, the issue of corruption or the procurement system, whatever. The 10th Parliament disagreed with it. That started to put a squeeze on Guyana economy. But despite of that, we still had some new investments going on. We had Qualfon, who is one of the largest employer in Guyana, come into Guyana. Teleperformance, some of the call center was probably the fastest growing. In that period of time, also pushing from the PP government, they were looking at alternative energy, such as the Amalia Falls project, ethanol production. So investors were excited, and oil were excited that Guyana was on the move. It was jumping the curve. It was making the next step. And 2015 came, election happened, and then we had this, what I call, oh my God effect. The government got into power, and I would, I have a lot of friends in the current government, and I would tell them, you won power, right or wrong. I think the election was not fair because I think you should have a recount at such a close
Peter,
vote.
we're here to talk about economic downturn. Let's yes. One of the reasons why I invite you is because you are so very brilliant with these things, and a chunk of the audience wants to learn from you about how we can take this economic downturn, as you said. And
yes. So when you lose investor confidence, which is the first level happens. So with the doom and gloom approach, we have probably turned back the clock, I would say probably 2 years.
But they say that economic downturns are usually temporary and part of an economic cycle. Isn't this accurate?
Yes.
Right.
So what happens now is, how do you rebuild that confidence?
Well, let's go there.
Yes.
Let's go there, Peter. What are some recommendations you have?
Yeah, the velocity of circulation, which is a term, is how fast money moves in a society. What you hear people say, money has slowed down. So that velocity of circulation has slowed significantly because of everything that is going on, the audits, new government. So we've got to get back to the stage where that velocity of circulation, money moves. So what is happening right now is people I consider hoarding the money. They don't know which way the government is going to go in terms of their economic vision. The 2015 budget didn't really help. So businesses were looking, say, for VAT reduction. If people were looking for increase in salaries. So all of that, when it did not happen, put what I call a fear in society that says, I better keep my money close hold, because if I go buy a house now or invest in something, I don't know if I'm going to get it back with the return on investment. So all of that then, what I call stifle the economy. So we have to agree that that's where we're at. Now, moving forward, I think the government has to go back to some of the transformation projects that we have proposed. And I don't think it differs from what they would have proposed in the long run. I mean, Stanley Ming, myself, Eric Phillips, all of us have talked for decades of the Deepwater Harbor and the road to Brazil. Well, wait a minute, the study is already done. The negotiations under the PP government was in place with the Brazilian government in order how are we going to fund this road. So we're in 2015, we're getting into 2016, get on with it.
But Peter, where do you know where they are? Do you know where they are on the curve with this particular project? I mean, they have been in power for what, 4 or 5 months? No,
but because they have not concentrated on the economy, they are concentrating on a lot of other things. They have failed to put.
And what is informing that perception that they're not concentrating on the economy?
Well, I mean, there's no meeting set up with the Brazilian government, the state of Roraima, the Brazilian investors that were already in the works in order to bring that.
You mean that particular project, but not the overall economy?
Well, it goes back to the overall economy. So without transformation projects, right, without large investment where it builds investor confidence, oil is still 5 years out. Well, next year if Exxon comes back in, that will create some excitement in the country, and other industries will come because of the oil. So that is a possible upturn 2016 and beyond. We've got to hope that the Venezuela issue, which is hurting investor confidence around the world, in Guyana, goes away. I mean, if you're Guyana Gold Fields, for example, get a letter such as that, and you're buying stock with Guyana Gold Fields at the Canadian stock market, you're going to get worried. So you're going to pull your money out of the stock of that Guyana Gold Field. That will reduce their capital. So there's a lot of effects that the government has to be very, very concerned with. It may be one thing to have your economic plan in your boardroom and in your closed door, but what you tell the public and how the perception goes through, right now, everybody sees Guyana wants to fight with Venezuela. Rightfully so, it's our land that we're talking about. But again, you have to balance that with the economic plan in order to make sure that you don't lose that next level that we need in Guyana to continue to develop our country.
Peter, you went back home, and I keep harping on this because this is admirable. You went back home because you wanted to help build your country, and also because you see an opportunity to help create jobs and make a difference. If you had the opportunity or the ear of the president of Guyana, what are some recommendations? Give me 3 or 4 recommendations you will make right now. Nothing political, but economic.
Well, one is we know sugar is on the downslide. No matter how you slice and dice it, prices of sugar is gone. We've got to move away from sugar. As one economist said, as you get richer, you don't eat more sugar. You tend to eat less sugar because you're getting more healthy. You go and do other things with your money. So we need to move from production of sugar, into ethanol. Brazil is the largest producer of ethanol in the world. They already have the markets. We need to tie our supply chain. So convert all that sugar and the waste of sugar into ethanol. I think the study is done. I think we had proposed in our manifesto that we start with 50,000 liters a month of production of ethanol and then build it from there. So number one project I would do tomorrow is the ethanol production, which is very easy because it's not a giant production facility. You can convert some of the sugar estates into the ethanol production. Now, we don't use any ethanol in our gasoline in Guyana. We don't mix it. We are using the raw gas. Right now, U.S. is in an E10, E15 policy. We can get an E85 policy. Brazil uses, ethanol 85% and 15% gasoline. So we need to look closer to our neighbor, tying that ethanol production to completion of the road to Brazil in the paving. Now, all we've got to do is put a few bridges across some of the rivers. And, if you can't do the road, then do a rail. Brazil now is, produce billions of dollars of goods in northern Brazil. They've always said they want to use our waterways. A truck drive now 48 hours from northern Brazil to the ports in Brazil to get the goods to market from the Roraima side of Brazil. Coming through Guyana is less than 24 hours. So tie that now with the Deepwater Harbor. Now those trucks coming to Guyana, we estimated thousands per week will come to Guyana, to the Deepwater Harbor. Now they're coming full with goods to get on that ship. What would they go back with? They would go back with our goods. So we talk about the coconut industry in Guyana. Revive the coconut industry. Brazil is the largest producer of sugar cane in the world. Imagine that.
I didn't even know that.
Yes. And we've got a fledgling coconut industry that needs to be revived. So imagine all of that goods going back on those empty trucks to Brazil. So there are plans in place that would radically change the economics. So when you start doing that, it builds investor confidence. It builds new type of jobs for our economy. People, can start looking at ethanol production. So you're going to a higher level of education. For ethanol, you need chemists, you need scientists, you need, technical workers. So our UG program would need to change. And these are not far-fetched ideas. These are projects that within the PPP government, we had gone a significant way of getting ready to implement. I would beg the current government is not to discard them, change procurement rules if you need to. Look at the tender way of doing business. Do all the things you want to do, but do not stop the projects.
Mm-hmm. So
ethanol, 3 to 4, and with that comes the bigger one is technology. I mean, we've got to get technology throughout the area. I wrote a column the other day that says when we were growing up in Guyana, we all knew the latrine. The latrine was 50 feet downhill, blowing away from the wind, because none of us wanted to have that smell come back into our house. Mm-hmm. Now, if you think of it, every one of us, and my kids, your kids, want a latrine in their room. So they're now saying, bring that old dirty latrine and put it right in the house. Same thing with technology. We have gone from the large systems to everything on the phone. So we need to radically change the e-governance approach to bring that technology to the rural areas. So I can go on my phone and get a copy of my birth certificate. India's doing that across the rural areas. So those are things I think we can do immediately that will change the way we do business. And in the 2015 manifesto of the PPP, those were all outlined and detailed plans that are available. The current government just has to take it and say, out of 5, if they do 3, I still think it will change investor confidence in Guyana. And I don't think we have any biases. I mean, if you talk to the opposition leader, he would say, take it. Here's all the details. Here's who we have talked to. Here's the investment strategy. Change what you need to change, but get on with governing the country and get on with the business of managing the economy. And, going from, a negative 7% growth, we need to get back to the 4.5% growth. But you've got to it's a comprehensive plan. I think the fact that, when you change tax laws, you change the way you manage a business, and you do, especially in a country like Guyana, a smaller country, if you do too many things too fast from the regulatory side, we are a cash society. A lot of people don't want to put their money in the banks. Now, when you say GRA can come to the bank and get my account, nothing wrong with that. That's a regulatory requirement that is going to be necessary over time. But we're trying to do too many changes while gold and sugar and rice and all those issues are going to torpedo the nation. So if you try to bring all of that perspective all at the same time, you're going to have an economy that can't recover in the next 2 years.
So if you had a chance if you were in a position to implement some of these recommendations or these policies, you would start with ethanol production.
Yes, because of the sugar issue, we're still growing and producing a lot of sugar. and you look at the waste, let's get on with it. Now we may still continue to sell the sugar, but as the price goes down in sugar, you diversify with the ethanol, and there's other products of the sugar cane that we can get to. But I would say ethanol, yes, is the first one. Albion Estate is ready for ethanol production. I would say let's go ahead and do it.
Would it surprise you?
I would love the government to call me and says, here, if you want to do it as a private investor or a public-private partnership, I believe there's money to be made from a business perspective. There's money to be made from a government perspective, and it brings Guyana on the map, given Brazil is the largest producer of ethanol in the world.
Would you though, Peter? Would you take up the mantle if they asked you?
Absolutely. I've been talking to many investors that is interested in the ethanol side of business. I think it's a good business model, and I believe it'll create new jobs. If government makes it a priority, I think it can do very well, and the private sector is who would need to get involved in that. Yes.
Would it surprise you if you found out that they are forging ahead with this, with the ethanol production?
No. I mean, we have made enough inquiries. I mean, through different parts of the business.
Okay. So who would you say should be listening to your proposal, to what you have to propose?
Well, I don't know who's running the economic cycle. I mean, the Minister of Business is concerned more about, I would say, smaller opportunities. I don't think the foreign investment side of Go Invest needs to be developed. And I think once that gets going and an economic plan is put in place, then whoever is on that board that can make sure that the larger transformation projects get in place, and I don't, and when it gets to Parliament, I mean, I would tell you, no one in the PPP, the government would or should disapprove it like the 10th Parliament did when they were in power, because these are projects that are good for Guyana.
I was going to ask you about a typical economic downturn feature, which you answered, unemployment, and how would you address that? But you answered it with the whole ethanol production and all the various branches of employment that can produce. You mentioned that being done simultaneously with the road.
Yes,
and then you spoke about
the three projects. In terms of when you look, a lot of us tend to look in Guyana to North America. We need to get our goods to America. No, I mean Brazil, Venezuela. I mean all of these. I mean, and we've got to learn to negotiate. I think the Venezuela issue has gotten out of hand. We need to look at both Suriname and Venezuela as economic partners. How we do that, it may be difficult in the current environment, but we've got to get to the stage where we're sitting down from an economic perspective and look and see where our neighbors can use our resources. We can use their resources. For example, oil is a geopolitics, in any case. I mean, we can build refineries in Guyana overnight. It will take decades to do that. Venezuela already have the refinery. So we've got to look at cutting deals, get the sovereignty issue resolved as fast as we can, and then look at how we partner with countries that have the expertise. Brazil.
What about Trinidad? What about Trinidad instead of Venezuela?
Same thing. Trinidad is lesser in terms of the massive refineries versus Venezuela, but definitely Trinidad is part of the system. Now, the other part of Guyana that we have not explored is on food production. But you've got to bring the energy costs down. Mm-hmm. The Amalia Falls was a long-term capital project. We all know that. But that is almost dead in the water, it seems. But the fact is, we still got to solve the energy issue. So we can't get to production. 800, was it 8 billion or whatever food needs in the Caribbean? A 747 lands every day in St. Martin, I think, from Thailand to refuel the cruise ships. Imagine that.
Wow.
Imagine if we can even just get 10% of that contract in Guyana for providing fruits and vegetables. But we've got to solve the energy issue, because the production costs to get their goods out of Guyana is so high that we can't compete with Chile and some of these other, Dominican Republic, for example. I learned the hard way in some of my adventures in Guyana is that I couldn't survive. I mean, you could bring a product in from Dominican Republic or Chile into Guyana and sell it cheaper than we could have produced it locally. Sad, but the truth.
Where do you see Guyana? If all these things are put in place, all the right economic strategies are put in place, where do you see Guyana's economy in 10 years, Peter?
But if we had continued the trend, I mean, if we go back to the 3.1 GDP 2014 billion, we've got 800 million in the reserves. We've got to make sure we don't spend that out. We've got to look at continuing that growth. So the only way you cannot, and then General Granger repeated some of the things we have said in the past, you cannot concentrate on the core what we have done so far, bauxite, gold, rice, sugar, all those things we're going to struggle. We've got to get past that. But you've got to then look at that growth pattern. You pick some of these projects. Imagine, I said 4,000 trucks coming through from northern Brazil to Deepwater Harbor in Berbice or Esquibo, wherever the final. Imagine all of those trucks would need fuel. It would need repairs. You would need hotels. You would need, and every village,
rest stops,
every exit off of that highway from Lethem to Georgetown or to Berbice or Esquibo would open a new village. And, we talk about village economies. Those are the things that make Guyana better. Now, if you want to get back to Guyana and you have an investment opportunity to open a gas station somewhere between Lethem and Georgetown, you would do that because you would make money. And those are the value-added effects of one of these projects getting off the ground is significant. So we got to get past from this small-minded approach of, let's open a couple more stores on Regent Street, or those things can get Guyana better.
Peter, let me go to the chat room quickly, okay? Jenny said, Dr. Ramsaroop, good afternoon. What are you recommending, and who should be listening to you? I think you've already answered the first part of our question. Who should be listening to you?
Well, as I said, the government, we have said it publicly, both as a political party and as individuals, that there is no problem in taking the projects, the transformational projects that the PP had proposed, and looking to see where we were at and how it could be continued. Mm-hmm. Nothing is wrong with that. Government, General Granger, the finance minister need to say, okay, you may disagree with the process, but don't disagree with the project. The project.
Jenny said again, would you go back to Guyana to do business?
Well, I am in Guyana doing business. I am doing investments. I'm not going to do, things like ethanol. I'm definitely be an investor in that process. And so I moved from hard operational business to the investment. So I'm looking for opportunities.
Okay.
I can invest. I can tell folks I've made money significantly in the real estate market in the early days, in between 2004 and 2011. The last 2011 to 2015 and 2014, 2015, the real estate market is tanked. But guys like us made significant market in the real estate opportunities in Guyana, and I want to see that back again.
It is going to come back, Peter. Peter, Rennie asked, why would we want to cut deals with a country that is in relentless pursuit of our territory?
Well, because you've got to change it. President Obama is one of the best guys that look at it. Look at things differently. You've got to look at things differently. Absolutely, yes. Venezuela is wrong with their renewal approach. But it all started with the oil fight. And so how do we then get this thing off the ground completely? All of us got different ways of doing business. But it doesn't, in today's world, I'm a military man, retired U.S. military. We can't, I served in Desert Storm, Desert Shield in Iraq, and if you look at what Trump said today, he said basically, the best deal for Iraq and Libya was to have those dictators. Now, in a democratic society, you will disagree with that. I, coming back from the war, realized when I got to the Middle East, these folks only could handle dictatorship. They can't handle democracy because of the religious and ethnic and all those differences. So going back to Venezuela, we've got to negotiate and figure out what is it that we can come to an agreement on and move on. But they have to take this off the plate. Absolutely. You can't negotiate, as in a weak point.
Mhm.
And I think President Granger has made enough statements to say how he wants to do it. And, you go back to the Burnham days. Burnham had a lot of talks with Venezuela, and nothing ever happened. They never came across the border apart from the one time on the island. But, we've got to get back to some negotiations to resolve the issue. And then the UN is involved, and hopefully it's solved soon.
Peter, somebody had asked me to ask you this question this evening. I think you answered it already, but I'm going to just ask you again. You at one time was a big investor in Guyana. Is this still your focus?
Yes, I lost a lot of money. Because of politics and disagreement and government, and everybody knows that story left and right. But I see the opportunities in Guyana. Yes, once we solve the governing issues, put back the economic plan in place, I would not have gone back into the heavy politics to push the 2015 manifesto of the PPP if I didn't strongly believe as an investor that was a great opportunity for people to get involved in. So absolutely, I think if anybody sees some of these projects, and the future of oil tends to be a plus for any nation. But the Saudi Arabian minister said he wished he had found water. Guess what? Guyana has more water per capita than anywhere in the world. So we may be looking forward to oil while countries are suffering for water. We need to figure out what is our water industry. So there are many great opportunities that our nation can do. The fact is, we got to work together to make it happen. We've got to put the right people in place and the right initiatives. We've got to shake hands, disagreed in politics, walk across the aisle in Parliament and agree to a project and move on. I think if we can get to that stage, it's all a dream, and I think we can do it. It just requires that commitment
Peter,
to make it happen.
Thank you, buddy. Yeah, again, these segments are a little too short for you. Always very interesting and very informative. But I gotta ask you this quick question before I go on a break. What comes for you first? Government or economics?
Economics. Economics would be the driver of how government operates.
You are definitely a politician, Peter. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Look forward to speaking to you again sometime.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Please hit right.